Welcome and thank you so much for joining me for another edition of the Paddock Press Report. I'm Timothy Lateau, back with another edition and so much news to cover. The biggest, of course, being the changes to the Triple Crown, the new Thoroughbred Championship Series, and also a date change for the Preakness Stakes. We'll get to that in just a little bit here. But first, we're going to start off with some news out of the Chicago area. Hawthorne Race Course sold for reported $90 million in bankruptcy court to a group called Alicam 2023, which is a group that was founded in 2026, according to some Delaware records. They don't intend to keep the track as a racetrack, instead looking to develop the property. So now it appears that thoroughbred racing has come to an end in Chicago. Horsemen have been ordered off the property by August 31st. So that now just leaves weeks for them to find new homes and for some new jobs as well, if they don't continue on with horse racing out of state. And for more on the impact for those horsemen and to himself, I spoke with Chris Block, president of the Illinois Thoroughbred Horsemen Association, just a little while ago. And now I'm joined by Chris Block, Illinois Thoroughbred Horsemen Association president and Illinois trainer for decades, very successful trainer on the Chicago circuit. And Chris, I know the last couple of weeks have been very disappointing and uncertain for you and for all the trainers in Chicagoland. Just talk to me, kind of just, what you're going through right now.
So, Tim, yeah, this is really a sad day sad period, if you will, for Illinois horse racing in Northern Illinois and the industry, and which encompasses all horsemen, breeders, trainers, owners, backstretch employees, blacksmiths, veterinarians. I'm sure I'm leaving some out, but all the people who make their living at this industry. It's the third largest city in the country, and for there not to be probably both thoroughbred and harness racing going forward into the future is really something that's jarring. And, I never thought we'd end up at this position, because I always thought there was a rosy end to this with the passage of the gaming bill back in 2019, which gave these racetracks an opportunity to invest into a racino or casino and make their racetrack into a casino and a racino situation, which is the model that works around the country. I'm sure, states like Kentucky and Indiana, Iowa, and Louisiana. I mean, all those models work really well. And for the opportunity to be missed here in Chicago is just, there's no words for it. And then on top of it, to let the industry just come to a grinding halt, and basically it's going to go away forever, most likely, unless somebody comes in here and builds a racetrack in another location, which we haven't heard that. I mean, we most likely have run the last thoroughbred race in Chicago, maybe in history. So when you think about that, it really sets the person back. And the horsemen always, we were led to believe by management here at Hawthorne that they were going to make this happen. When you asked how things were coming, Mr. Carey would always tell us, well, right around the corner, another 6 months, we're doing our due diligence. If I heard that word once, I heard it 100 times, or those two words. I don't know what due diligence he was doing, other than I'm sure he was trying to try to save the industry. Because I had many discussions just between the two of us about this, because my family's been heavily involved in thoroughbred horse racing and breeding for decades. And, so we had a lot of heart-to-heart discussions that led me to believe he was going to make this happen. And whatever happened, I'm not here to judge, because I don't know the dynamics of what went into the negotiations to try to make a deal. And I'm sure he wanted to hold on to it as much as possible for his family. But, the only thing I can think of is that maybe he got too greedy and ran people in the wrong direction. Instead of coming to the table and negotiating, I think they might have went another direction, because ultimately this came down to an auction of who was going to be involved a week ago this past Tuesday. And there was only one entity, a real estate company. There were no gaming or racing entities that had any interest in entering the auction. I think that's pretty telling on all levels, that in order, who passes up an opportunity to have a casino, right? I mean, it's from my understanding, it's a license to print money. And we would have been the benefactor because it would have saved our industry. And it just was really, really sad to see on that day that the time came and went, and there were no entities that stepped up to try to buy this to keep it as a racetrack and eventually make it into a casino and save the industry.
Sure, yeah. Do you feel lied to or betrayed, or what are those kind of emotions like, after kind of being led on to think that, there would still be a future of racing at Hawthorne?
Yeah, so I guess the best word to say, I don't want to use the word lie, because maybe they were trying to do it. I'm finding it hard to believe they weren't, but betrayed to a degree. Maybe those words are kind of the same, but yeah, I mean the industry and the backstretch feels betrayed. I mean, I've talked to many horsemen back here that just said, I just feel like we were led down a road that was never going to be there. Um, Especially over the last couple of years, it just seemed more and more dire that they were having a hard time getting to a deal. But we always thought once they put it up for sale, and especially when it went to Chapter 11, oh, there's going to be a ton of them step in here and try to buy this. And that's, from my aspect, not only am I just in complete disbelief about how we've lost this, but I'm also in complete disbelief how there was not one entity that stepped up and even looked at trying to make a bid to buy this. They must have done a lot of homework and saw something here they didn't like, because on auction day there was no auction, and I think that said a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And now, those court proceedings, continue on. And obviously, they're something that the judge has been saying too is trying to kind of like mitigate in this aftermath, kind of the upheaval, for people on the backstretch, because there are so many families, as you and I were talking about, still on the backstretch. Where does that kind of stand in, I
Mhm.
guess, what do the next few weeks or months look like kind of in your mind, maybe in kind of a best case scenario as people transition or move to other racing circuits?
Sure. So this past week, Monday, and then just wrapped up here about a half an hour ago, were a couple of hearings, one on Monday, one on Wednesday, and then they finished here about, like I said, about a half hour ago. So where things stand right now for our racetrack backstretch community and the horses and the horsemen that are here, an interesting development came in the sense that, remarkably, Hawthorne and the buyer did not have a plan in place for the exit of the horses and the backstretch. And the buyer had no idea. They knew there were horses here, but they did not know there were 300 families and 150 children back here. So that has been a real, uh, uh, I guess it's kind of held things up and moving forward to an actual closing date. And we, the horsemen, and our attorney have negotiated, and the seller has stepped up. I'm sorry, not the seller. The buyer has stepped up and gifted the backstretch $1 million to operate the backstretch over the next 30 to 40 days and allow the movement of people to relocate. So that is saved us from probably being moved out of here within a couple of weeks. It's pushed it now to August 31st. So we're informing all the backstretch employees that live here, which there, like I said, there's over 450 of them, that they need to start finding alternative, a second plan, if you will, for housing, and they have to be out here by August 31st. So we had already prepared them to a degree with a couple membership and backstretch meetings over the last 60 days, because I was starting to see that this was not going as well as I thought it might in the auction, or in the process of of entities stepping up. We were being told that it wasn't going well on that level. So I pulled the backstretch together a couple times for meetings and told them that they need to start thinking in that direction. It's one thing to say it; it's another thing to do it. And people have lived here for many years. Um, there's kids that have born back here that are now in college, and there's another generation coming up behind those. So the they've been told we're going to have a meeting next week to update them. But just in the last couple of days, we've gotten the word out really strongly that they need to start moving in that direction, and we're going to do all we can on the association part of the Illinois Thoroughbred Horse Association to help them navigate those waters to see if we can help them find a path to a new home, a new location, and whether we're looking also on the level of trying to help them a little bit financially as well to get them started off in a new location. So this is going to be a Herculean task, I can tell you, because a lot of these people, I think, are scared, which I totally get. But we're trying to reassure them, and we've got good people, boots on the ground here, to try to help them get through this process.
Sure, yeah. What do you think the future? I know you mentioned it earlier. The future of, Chicago racing is bleak, maybe non-existent. I know that there's been talk though about, possibility maybe a standard bred track kind of, waiting in the wings, another kind of developer, looking, once
Mm.
Hawthorne uh closed that, that they'd be able to build, is there a possibility you think of them also operating a thoroughbred track too, or is there any kind of chance of racing to return to Chicago? Because like you said, it's the third
Well,
biggest city in the country.
sure. Yeah. So yes, I mean, to answer your question, there is some entities that are very interested in that second license, which is a harness. In the law right now. It's strictly harness. It was successor language that was put into the gaming bill in 2019 because of the loss of Balmoral and Maywood on the harness side to give them another venue to race and have a casino. So there was movement on that right away in Tinley Park, but there was some issues that came up with the entity, which was a gentleman by the name of Rick Heidner. It was going to team up with Tim Carey, and Mr. Heidner had some issues from, I guess, some past dealings, and Governor Pritzker pulled the license right away. That all came to a standstill. So that license is still available, and it's my understanding there are entities interested, but I think they're going to have to wait, if this process plays out the way I understand it, till January 1st in order to go and apply for that opportunity to get that license. So it might be what I would call a free for all, if you will, that there might be multiple entities interested in that. Um, the issue that I see for us thoroughbreds industry is that you need a bigger footprint for a thoroughbred track than you do a harness track. The harness track, basically, you get a 3-mile quarter oval with a couple barns and a grandstand, and that's it. Okay. Thoroughbred, you need a full backstretch of many barns. You have all the ancillary expenses of manure removal. You've got a starting gate crew, track maintenance crew, valets to help saddle in the afternoon the horses. And I mean, it's cost so much more to run thoroughbred than it does harness. So if you're an investor that's looking on the gaming side of it, and you have to have that necessary evil of horse racing in order to get that license, you're probably going to choose harness racing because it's going to cost you a lot less to put on and develop. But with that being said, there's a couple of entities that have spoken to myself and our executive director, Dave McCaffrey, that they have an interest in possibly doing thoroughbred. But when we spoke to them, I think they didn't understand. Well, they understood, but they didn't. They were trying to do it on a little lesser level. And I said, you use a 5/8 mile track for thoroughbred. It's got to be a mile. You can't have, you cannot go without a turf course. It just is an essential part of thoroughbred horse racing. So I don't know how that's all going to play out. Um, I know that there's a couple entities that like thoroughbred racing and would love to have a big part in saving the industry if it's possible, but it's going to take an enormous investment. We can change the law. I'm pretty sure we can add, you know, it says only harness. I'm sure there'll be plenty of support with what's happened now that we could change it to thoroughbred as well. But I think that's all for something that's going to develop over the next few months, if at all.
Yeah, sure, yeah. And for you personally, Chris, you and your family are really so invested in Illinois racing. Now,
Mhm.
at least for the interim, and for I'm sure the short term in the next few years, Fairmount Park is, down in towards St. Louis is the only, track in Illinois left. What does kind of the future hold for you and for you family as far as your racing operations?
Sure. So, team block is going to look a lot different going forward. We have already, in anticipation of this, made a move this past March and dispersed some of our older breeding stock. And then we thought that if Hawthorne was able to pull off a deal to have a casino and turn the racetrack into what it was supposed to be, a racino, and rebuild industry, we could always reinvest. So we've already started, if you will, kind of knocking the number down horse wise. But we'll always be in it because my family loves it and it's what we've always been a part of. And once you get into horse racing, it's, to me, it's hard to leave because it's in your blood and it's brings people together. It's brought our family together over the course of the last 50 years. So we'll be in it, but we'll be in it on a different level, probably not near the number of horses. And we're going to have to probably breed a different horse. Um, Hopefully a better horse. Not that we haven't had really good horses over the years, and we really have. But it all starts with how we got the foundation started in Chicago, whether it was Hawthorne or Arlington. We got those horses uh, headed in that direction and then found out their quality. And if they didn't meet that quality, to move on to a Kentucky racetrack to race or Louisiana. And we always had Hawthorne and Arlington to fall back on. Um, we won't have that now. So that kind of has to play into where we look at going forward. So myself, I love Chicago. It's my home. I don't want to leave here, but I'm going to set up, I'm going to get through the fall in Kentucky and go to most likely back to New Orleans for the winter, and then look at what's probably best for myself and my clientele, and which would most likely be, and my family, uh, probably looking at Indiana as a possibility to set up next spring, or the Kentucky circuit, and see if I can get going there. It's going to be tough because the industry has really changed so much, in my opinion, that's polarized kind of at the top. And so you've got these big stables in Kentucky that are, I respect wholeheartedly, and the Bob Bafferts even come into Kentucky now, and so it's going to be difficult to get started there. But I'm going to give it a shot. I think myself and my crew do a pretty darn good job in training a racehorse. But I'm not a promoter of myself. If people want me, they'll see my record and they'll see what I do. But I'll get the word out that I'm in Kentucky now, or Indiana and Kentucky, wherever I land, and hope that I can continue to train my own racing stable. And but time will tell. Time will tell on that.
Yeah. Some big grade one wins in Kentucky on that resume. So yeah, I know that resume speaks for itself, Chris. And yeah, I know, we might not have Hawthorne any longer, but the the Chicago and Illinois racing fans, they'll still all be rooting for you. So that's for sure.
Well, I appreciate that, and we do. Over the years, I've had. It's been a real. I've been real proud to when we moved to Kentucky to race a horse in a stake or just race down there. Period. The support that I've gotten from the local fans and horsemen that when you go out of state and you represent the state of Illinois, it makes you proud. So I'll always be a Chicagoan. My heart is here. Born and raised in Central Illinois. I'm a huge Cubs fan. I'm a huge Bears fan. Always will be. So my roots are right here, and I'll never let go of that. But there's certainly a new path that I have to look at for my career, and I think we're good enough to. I think our quality of when I say I like to look at it from myself and my crew because I can't do it without them. And they've been with me so long. We know how to train a racehorse. If we're just given the opportunity, I think we do a pretty good job. And the industry is difficult. A lot of things can happen, but if you give us the opportunity, I think we make the most of it.
Definitely, yeah. Chris, I appreciate your time. I know it's a real uncertain one for you and for all your fellow Illinois horsemen. So, yeah, I just really appreciate
Yeah, if
your
it,
thoughts.
Tim, if I could just add this, as the president of the association here over the last 8 years, and I've been on the board for a long time, but I've had a greater appreciation for our horsemen. These people are hard workers and good horsemen, really good horsemen. And it breaks my heart to see that this has happened to all of us. Um, I've grown to have an appreciation for just the small trainer that has 3 or 4 horses and does it himself to the guy like a Larry Ravelli who's got 80. Larry's been here in Chicago a long time since he started training, and he's still here. And I have respect for that. But I also have a ton of respect for these smaller horsemen that may not have a place to go now and may have to start a whole new career or new job or whatever it might be. My heart goes out to those people. And I never intended it for this to happen. And I wanted to be at the head of this to carry it forward. So this hurts a lot, to say the least. But I appreciate you having me on and anybody else that's I've done interviews with over the last few days because you care and you care about us and you care about the industry, and that means a lot.
Yeah, no, yeah, you guys mean a lot to us, and yeah, like you said, just the resiliency of the Illinois horsemen. I know it hasn't been an easy last few years, and isn't getting any easier anytime soon. So, I just appreciate all your efforts too, just for the industry too in Illinois.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate that.
And our thanks to Chris for his time. Another note as well, Hawthorne has applied for race dates for 2027 with the Illinois Racing Board. Obviously, the track is in the process of being sold, so they don't have a track to race at. The Curie family did confirm in a statement, though, that that's not a mistake. They did intend to apply for 2027 race dates. They're still looking at their options, they've said. That leaves Fairmount Park is Illinois' last remaining track down in the St. Louis area. On to some other news from the past couple of weeks. The biggest one, of course, being this new creation of the Thoroughbred Championship Series, and also a date change for the Preakness Stakes. Now, how did this all play out? We'll go back to August 3rd, and that's when Churchill Downs Incorporated and the New York Racing Association jointly announced the creation of the Thoroughbred Championship Series, a 6-race series worth $5 million in additional prize money, and that includes the Kentucky Derby and the Belmont Stakes, as well as a couple of other races from both Churchill Downs and NYRA. Also, the Matt Winn Stakes at Churchill Downs, then also Saratoga's races of the Jim Dandy Stakes and its summer centerpiece, the Travers Stakes, as well as a third race that'll be run at Churchill Downs in September, but has not been named yet. That one will be the 6th and final race of this 6-race series for 3-year-olds. All the races are expected to be between 1.125 miles and 1.5 miles in distance. And each race is also expected to carry a $1 million purse or greater, which the Matt Win Stakes and Jim Dandy Stakes currently do not. These races will all take place from May to September, being about 4 to 5 weeks of spacing between all those races. And one important point to note as well is that the Maryland Jockey Club, Monmouth Park, and Parks Racing already have $1 million race in that time span. The Maryland Jockey Club, of course, is the Preakness in mid-May. The Monmouth Park has the Haskell Stakes in July, and then the Pennsylvania Derby is in September at Parks Racing in the Philadelphia area. And those track officials said that they were not contacted or aware of this announcement taking place with the new Thoroughbred Championship Series. So it appears, at least, that this was just a NYRA and Churchill Downs Incorporated joint venture, not looking to include any other tracks in that. Also, horses must race in at least 4 out of those 6 races to be eligible for that $5 million bonus money at the end of the series. And the top 8 horses that accrue points across those 6 races will be eligible for that money. So a lot of news there. Of course, the question is what happens to the Triple Crown. Um, the Belmont continues to be 5 weeks after the Derby. Obviously, the Preakness was not included in this newest change. So that's all kind of new developments there. David O'Rourke, CEO of NYRA, said, quote, "This is just the foundation. They're open to some conversations with others. There's an emphasis on the 4 to 5 week gap in the spacing of these races. Other divisions also could be added. They're saying maybe other ages or distances or surfaces could be considered for maybe fillies or turf races or sprint races. They didn't really expand on that, but this is just kind of their starting point, is what David O'Rourke from NYRA has said initially. So there's still going to be a lot more to come on this, and that third race at Churchill Downs still has not been named. As far as what race that could be, there are a couple of races on Churchill Downs Stakes schedule that fit with that timing, like the Lucas Classic. That race is for older horses, 3-year-old and up. So that obviously would be adjusted. Also, a smaller non-graded stakes race as well for 3-year-olds is run at Churchill Downs in September. That race would need purse boost. That's the biggest update on the Thoroughbred Championship Series. Before that, in June, earlier this summer, there was bit of a dispute over the intellectual property rights of the Preakness Stakes. Obviously, the Stronach Group's First Racing has sold the tracks, Pimlico and Laurel Park, to the state of Maryland. Maryland Jockey Club now oversees the racing there, a nonprofit system, kind of like NYRA in New York. And basically, the Maryland Jockey Club has ownership of the Preakness. They did not have the intellectual property rights, which was put up for auction. That Churchill Downs put an $85 million bid in, but a law recently created by the state of Maryland allowed the Maryland Jockey Club to meet any bid. They did. They met the $85 million bid and prevented Churchill Downs from getting a hold of the intellectual property rights of the Preakness Stakes. So where does that leave things? Obviously, not to speculate, but you can imagine that may not have gone over so well with some of those Churchill Downs Incorporated CEOs. So there was an update with that. And that happened in June. And so then, about 6 weeks later, the Thoroughbred Championship Series was unveiled alongside NYRA that Churchill Downs Incorporated decided to work with this initiative on. 2 days after the announcement of the Thoroughbred Championship Series, that's when the Maryland Jockey Club took it upon themselves, less than 48 hours, to announce that the Preakness Stakes is going to be moved back by 8 days in 2027. So rather than being 2 weeks after the Derby, it'll now be 3 weeks and a day after the Derby on a Sunday, May 23rd, 2027. That change, again, it was announced just 48 hours after the announcement of the series. That leaves also a 13-day gap until the Belmont Stakes, which will supposed to return to a 1.5 mile distance in 2027 at Belmont Park. So the Maryland Jockey Club, in their change, cited a shift in modern training trends. Obviously, the last two Derby winners, Sovereignty and Golden Tempo, skipped the Preakness, went on to the Belmont, which has been a mile and a quarter the last 3 years as it's been ran at Saratoga Racecourse in upstate New York, while Belmont Park has undergone its renovations. Now, it would have been interesting had the traditional spacing been kept to see how many horses would have skipped the Preakness again, gone for the longer test of the championship, mile and a half distance at Belmont Park. Um, Also should note that out of the last Derby winners, the last eight Derby winners, five of them have skipped the Preakness. But of those five, one of them was Mandaloun. Didn't know that he won the Derby because Medina Spirit was DQ'd from his Derby win 9 months after the Derby win because of a drug overage. Also, Country House had a respiratory illness after he was elevated to his Derby win after maximum security was disqualified in 2019. Rich Strike, kind of a fluke horse in there, 80 to 1 long shot in 2022. He won the Derby, a really finicky horse that Eric Reed said needed to have his trainer said needed to have, 4 to 5 weeks between each race. So he was kind of more of an anomaly as far as Derby winners go. And then the last two, Sovereignty and Golden Tempo, like I said, had the option to go to the Belmont Stakes at a mile and a quarter, a $2 million purse, just the same as the Preakness Stakes. Those trainers felt it was better to give their horses more time and to focus on just one race instead. Um, Meanwhile, if we zoom out though to the last 67 years, out of those 66 Derby winners, not including Mandaloun, out of those 66 Derby winners, only seven skipped Preakness Stakes. So obviously, while it's been kind of a more recent trend to skip the Preakness Stakes, I don't know if you can call it a trend. There are certainly those asterisks and those reasons for skipping the Preakness Stakes. So that's got to be kept in mind as well. Obviously, Churchill Downs Incorporated and Naira made the move first in announcing the Thoroughbred Championship Series. I think what's the big question was it the right thing for the Maryland Jockey Club to respond in turn by moving the Preakness Stakes by 8 days? I think now ultimately they're going to lose the support of both traditionalist fans and horsemen. Obviously those horsemen who still want to go to the Preakness to try for the Triple Crown still have the option to do so, but it's not the traditional space that we've been used to for the last 6 decades or so. Fans who have been backing the Triple Crown and wanting to keep that same spacing between races are also not going to be thrilled with that change as well. That's obviously just a given. The Triple Crown spacing has been a debate for years now, really, going back over a decade to when California Chrome was going for its Triple Crown. There was even talk amongst track executives about that. Obviously, Naira and CDI hold the upper hand. They are uh, multi-billion-dollar companies raking in net profits every year in the billions. The Maryland Jockey Club is much smaller, more like tens of millions or maybe 100 million in that revenue that they're raking in. So it's a different scale. Those tracks have different leverage, and obviously Churchill Downs Incorporated and Naira decided to pair together to make their own change and not include the Maryland Jockey Club with that. The question now becomes, did the Maryland Jockey Club respond the right way to that? I will say the Triple Crown, certainly one of the most unique events in all of sports. Anyone can attest to that. You've got one shot at that with your 3-year-old horse. That's it. You don't get another shot. So that's what's really unique. And I think that's what a lot of sports fans do understand. They do get how difficult it is to win the Triple Crown. And maybe if they don't know that fact about 3-year-olds, they still know it's those three races in 5 weeks. They know it's, winning those, three big events in a short span. And that's what a lot of fans, the casual fans, respect and admire about the Triple Crown. I think that's what draws them in. This year's past Derby also had a record viewing attendance on NBC. It was the greatest televised horse race in history at 24.4 million viewers. One of the most watched sporting events as well of 2026, as it always is every year. You don't want that to diminish in any way. Obviously, when it comes to Belmont viewership, it's much higher by, 10 million viewers when there is a Triple Crown winner on the line, but it still manages to rake in about 4 million views every year anyways. Obviously, Naira wants the Belmont Stakes to be bigger. I don't know that the Thoroughbred Championship Series makes it so. And just a reminder too for fans, kind of a history lesson here. But if you go back to when the term Triple Crown was first being used. First of all, it was attempted to be replicated from the British Triple Crown back in the 1800s after the Civil War when the Kentucky Derby was created. New York had a few different jockey clubs that were also trying to replicate that, create some excitement around a three-race series like they had in Britain with the 2000 Guineas, Epsom Derby, and St. Leger. Ultimately, those failed. They did not catch on as they had hoped. There was a lot of battling too between the eastern states, especially the east coast of New York, and then also what they considered was Western at the time, and Kentucky. Even some tracks in New York banned connections from sending their horses to Kentucky to race. So that created a lot of infighting between states. I would say those Triple Crown attempts at creating the Triple Crown stalled for decades. Gallant Fox in 1930, he's sort of the first horse that was thought of is winning the Triple Crown. A daily racing form writer, his name was Charles Hatton. He coined the term in his writing. Some other newspapers also picked it up. Fans picked it up. And over the course of the 30s and 40s, term Triple Crown grew in popularity, especially as was preceded by Sir Barton in 1919. He actually won the Triple Crown in the order of the Preakness, Derby, and then Belmont. The Preakness and Belmont, the Preakness was not a mile and 3/16 that year, it was a mile and an eighth. The Belmont was a mile and 3/8, not a mile and a half. So he didn't win at the full distances anyways, but he still won those three races nonetheless, and a race in between those as well. But then if you look after 1919, 1930, Sir Barton Gallant Fox, then 1935, Gallant Fox's son Omaha won the Triple Crown. And then also followed up by War Admiral, Whirlaway, Count Fleet, Assault, and then Citation, of course, in 1948. Those horses all increasingly boosted the Triple Crown's popularity. And a lot of those horses won the Triple Crown in non-traditional spacing. A lot of them won it when the Derby was a week before the Preakness. The Preakness was the second Saturday in May. The Derby was the first Saturday in May. And then there was a 4 week gap to the Belmont Stakes. A lot of those horses even ran once or twice between the Preakness and the Belmont. Horses ran more often back then. Those are still the biggest races as far as purse money, history, prestige. Those races garnered the attention and renown as the Triple Crown by a lot of sports writers and fans, and it caught on. They eventually created the Triple Crown Trophy in 1950, which made it a little bit more formal. The Triple Crown has always been one of those informal kind of sports series, and ultimately it became that way because of the fans. So I think the fans are with the tracks as they continue to go forward. If they make any other changes, they need to keep the fans in mind. Will the fans buy on to something that is new, something that is longer, 6 race series over the span of months, and something that's newer as well, just as far as the date? Another point too is that as far as the TV rights, yeah, NBC has extended its contract with the Preakness Stakes through the year 2032, which the Maryland Jockey Club is touting, as an exciting thing. The Black Eyed Susans will be ran on the Saturday before the Preakness on NBC for the first time. It gets network coverage. So that's another exciting thing that the Maryland Jockey Club has been touting. So it's excited about those points, as well as Maryland Million Day in October. That will also be televised on NBC. So there's a lot of upsides that the Maryland Jockey Club has pointed out. One of the downsides, though, is that to the casual sports fans, the Preakness Stakes being run on that Sunday in May is not going to be the most, maybe not the biggest sporting event that day to just the casual sports fans trying to soak in as many events as they can in the month of May, because this year and upcoming in 2027, May 23rd is the last day of the last round of the PGA Championship. Other years, especially 2028 and going forward, it's Memorial Day weekend. That Sunday has both the Indy 500 and the Coke 600 for IndyCar and NASCAR, two of the biggest motorsporting events in North America. So those events may not be a huge detraction, but it certainly doesn't help the case to try to a bigger viewership base for the Preakness Stakes by having it on those dates. Not sure if that was thought of or if that came into the equation at all. I don't believe the NBC is broadcasting any of those events or slated to in the next couple of years, but that's certainly another thing to consider that casual sports fans who might try to be fans of a lot of sports or like to catch up on a lot of sporting events, they're going to have to contend with that as well. I know that's a lot of news on the Triple Crown. That's kind of where everything is at. One last note, too, a lot of people may not know this. The current spacing of the Triple Crown, I mentioned that the Derby and Preakness used to have just 1 week between the two, and there was 4 weeks till the Belmont. Current spacing of the Triple Crown hasn't been in place since 1969. Um, like I said, horses would frequently run a race or two races maybe between the Preakness and Belmont. And it was very rare for horses to skip races between any of the Triple Crown races. Most horses since 1969 went on to, if they won the Derby, they also went on to run in the Preakness as well. Injury, illness, things like that may have prevented them. Otherwise, of course, 1985, Garden State Park in New Jersey created its own Triple Crown series that included the Kentucky Derby, excluded the other two legs, and he had Spend a Buck won the Derby in second fastest time, ended up winning the four race series that Garden State Park had created along with the Kentucky Derby and winning that I believe it was a $2 million bonus thing. That is a lot at you, but that's kind of the latest of where things stand. Of course, we'll stay on the story and keep you updated if there are any more developments. I'm sure there will be. As some fans have said, it's not too late for any of those track officials to go back and think, hey, maybe this wasn't such a well thought out plan. Maybe they could have collaborated more. And maybe they can make some adjustments to include the Triple Crown or to revert the Triple Crown back to some of its traditions. Um, Obviously, leaders were not working together on multiple developments of this, and we'll see who makes the next move. There have been many moves made, and still more to come, I'm sure. Man, where to go with the next headlines? Let's see. Well, this is quite an interesting headline here. HISA is investigating 5 races from this past Sunday. 3 were at Saratoga, 2 at Monmouth Park. 4 of the results being investigated, the horse won the race. That's sort of under investigation. The 2 at Monmouth on Sunday were race 3 and race 4. The Great Amira won race 3. Race 4 is won by Tapayak. Both horses were trained by Angel Carraz. And what's kind of the interesting number that caught people's attention here, race 3 win payout was $37.20. Meanwhile, the $2 double was only 25.60 with a 7-2 shot to Pike in the next race. So that was something that was pointed out. That was eye catching. And then in race 4 at Saratoga and race 7 at Saratoga, horses formerly trained by Angel Carraz, now trained and owned by Ernesto Ochoa, Classic Rock, and MB's Melanie Cares. Both those horses ended up winning their races. Ochoa had another horse run fourth in the race. All horses that were major long shots, or at least stepping up to a bigger track. They were more running at Gulfstream Park or other tracks. Not as tough competition. They not only stepped up to bigger competition and certainly exceeded expectations in their odds there. All 5 of those horses under investigation had their final work at the Fairhill Training Center as well in Elkton, Maryland, which obviously training centers have their own regulations and inspections and things like that. Fairhill is certainly a very upstanding training center. Grand Motion's based there. A number of trainers train there. They have a fantastic sprawling grounds there. But it's still has to do with the investigation. People are not sure if there was, if there was something that happened off track property or on track. Um, Obviously, HISA is not uh, saying that there's any specific charges or accusing any trainer or anyone of anything at this point. Their language that they use in their press releases is that they're investigating, they're looking into the results of these races because of public outcry. People caught on that these were connections who hadn't started a horse at Saratoga or at Monmouth Park yet this summer. These horses stepped up in class and blew the competition. One horse won by more than a dozen lengths. Caught a lot of people off guard. And it wasn't just if it was one race, people might have said, okay, that was one race. This was multiple races. Some people even call these horses the Fairhill Five as part of this. They're not sure what it is, if it's a scheme or something like that, but all the horses are connected and that they had their final work at the Fairhill Training Center. And all 5 also at one point were trained by Angel Carraz. Obviously, 3 of them were trained by Ernesto Ochoa at Saratoga. those are some of those big headlines there. Another sad headline, a really sad one. Robbie Alvarado, best known for riding Curlin in 2007 and 2008. Both years was the Eclipse champion for Horse of the Year. He passed away this past week. He was 52 years old, passed away at Kenny McPeak's Saratoga house. And 4 days before he passed away, he had heart surgery to put some stents in his heart. Kenny McPeak said that his wife went upstairs late one morning and found him passed away in his bed. He probably passed away asleep in the middle of the night. And Robbie Alvarado, of course, he retired back a couple of years ago now. His last big win was in 2020 on Swiss Skydiver in the October Preakness that year. And a brilliant stretch duel between him and John Velasquez on the Derby winner Authentic. Obviously, he won some big races on Curlin, the Preakness, the Dubai World Cup, Breeders' Cup Classic. Um, uh, Certainly a jockey that a lot of people in Kentucky knew, in Louisiana knew where he was from, but won races coast to coast and around the world. And certainly a real sad headline there coming out of Saratoga this past week with his passing. There's also a GoFundMe as well that's been created to help benefit his three kids as well. Another headline as well. Ted Noffey, a 2-year-old champ from last year, won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He is back in training with Todd Pletcher at Saratoga. He's expected to return to racing in around 6 or 7 weeks. We'll see how he does with that. That start probably, just due to the timing, will not be at Saratoga, but he is training there at Saratoga with Todd Pletcher. On to some racing results this past weekend. Big one, probably the second biggest of the meet for Saratoga, of course, Whitney weekend. Whitney featured a great showdown and a total rematch between the big four horses that most recently clashed in the Stephen Foster Stakes at Churchill Downs, kind of that midsummer clash. That was back in late June. And the Stephen Foster boosted its purse from $1 million to $2 million at Churchill. The Whitney was still held at its $1 million purse, typical purse. But boy, did it draw a great field and then some. In addition to those horses, Sovereignty, White Abarrio, Bayuza, and Magnitude. It also featured the filly Nitrogen, who was last year's champion 3-year-old filly as well. So the race, how it unfolded, Magnitude and Nitrogen went out to the front, set some pretty fast fractions. Magnitude was the favorite. Of course, he won the Stephen Foster that day on a sloppy track. He also won the Dubai World Cup, so he's had a big year already. Magnitude dropped back through the pack on the turn. Nitrogen pulled away at the top of the stretch, but Sovereignty, who was last going into the going into the home turn, Sovereignty came through the stretch and beat Nitrogen by a couple lengths actually. So a really thrilling finish there. Nitrogen, definitely game effort by her. Certainly a lot of fans were impressed by what they saw, and really one of the best efforts of her career. Sovereignty as well. It was a great effort that it took from him to go from last to first on the turn and to pull away like that in the stretch. It's kind of what fans have been used to from Sovereignty, and he just hasn't shown that this year in his prior two starts in the Stephen Foster and the Oaklawn Handicap. He was third in the Foster, second in the Oaklawn Handicap. And it's his first win, in fact, if you can believe it, since last August when he won the Traverse at the end of August last year. Also worth mentioning, Baeza was fourth. They put some pads on the back of the gate so that he wouldn't rub himself on the back of the gate. It seems to irritate himself, or maybe he was trying to scratch himself in past starts on the back of his gate. That's what Bill Mott had thought resulted in poor starts. Ended up not making a difference though. In the Whitney Stakes, Baeza still broke slowly, and he did close to be fourth. Not what Bill Mott was hoping there as far as breaking better. We'll see if Baeza is one to watch them moving up through the year. Magnitude, a head scratching finish towards the back of the pack. But last of them all was White Abarrio, the 2023 Breeders' Cup Classic champion. He won the Oaklawn Handicap earlier this year. That ended up being his final career win. C2 Stables decided to retire White Abarrio. He's now 7 years old. Already has a stud deal set for next year as well. They felt it wasn't worth the risk, and that just he hadn't wasn't performing like himself on track, didn't have anything left to prove. Obviously, he was able to compete at a really high level. His 7-year-old season, he certainly should have still been racing as he was, but just wasn't his year. The second half of the year just ran it into some tough horses. And ultimately, with this scratching, disappointing finish at Saratoga, that was what they decided to call a career with White Barrio. Plenty of other excitement, though, especially from some other tested horses as well, including Deterministic. He took the 4-star day of the mile turf race for his trainer, Miguel Clement, a day after Miguel's father, Christophe Clement, was inducted into the Racing Hall of Fame. And Botas for Miguel Clement also won the Hall of Fame stakes on Saturday as well. So an exciting race there. Mibago at a price, I think more than 15 to 1. He was second, following that up with a dead heat stakes win that he had just a month ago with Zulu Kingdom. Zulu Kingdom was third. He had some traffic trouble, a tough stretch run, but he ended up getting through horses to be third. And Rhetorical disappointed with an off the board finish. It was a rainy race though. Soft turf, not the easiest turf to be running on. Cassie also thought that Mibago wouldn't be as well suited to soft turf. Obviously, proved him wrong there. He had a pretty game run. Classic Q is a filly that Cassie had entered into the race. He did scratch her though because the turf came up soft. The Saratoga Derby as well was on Saturday at Saratoga. Mile and 3/16 race on the turf. A big clash between the top three finishers in the Belmont Derby from the 4th of July. Title Roll, West End Kid, and Remember Mamba were the top three horses in that race. They were all upset though by Glacius. So big long shot, double-digit odds. He wired the field. In fact, he went all the way wide wire. And it ended up with West End Kid, who was second in the Belmont Derby. He was second again in the Saratoga Derby, followed by Title Roll, and then Remember Mamba. Also, the test stakes, a 6 furlong sprint for 3-year-old fillies. A lot of really good 3-year-old fillies in this one here. Explora shipped out from the West Coast, actually from Kentucky, where she'd been racing most recently for Bob Baffert. Explora won it by open lengths. Really impressive stretch kick out of Explora. Percy's Bar was second. I thought she was going to be one to watch out for, and she was. She was 6 to 1 with her odds. Some pretty good value there. She closed from further back in the pack to be second. And then Goodall was third. Sippin' Pretty was fourth. Sunday was the biggest day of racing at Mountaineer Park in West Virginia. They had the West Virginia Derby and a couple of other big stakes. And JJ Gray came into the race as one of the favorites, one to watch. He had 2 back-to-back stakes wins at Prairie Meadows in Iowa. Obviously, loved that track. He won the Prairie Mile, followed that up with a win in the Iowa Derby. He disappointed though. Off the board, he led. He hit the front, was running in the front of the pack, but did not go on with it when they turned for home. Instead, it was Zenal, who was, I believe, 3 to 1, and certainly had a nice run on the front end to get there to win. Trendsetter closed from the back of the pack as well to be second. That was this past weekend. The weekend before that, there was the Arlington Million in Virginia, the biggest weekend of racing there in Virginia now with the Arlington Million card. Burnham Square certainly circled himself as the best turf horse. Had a game run down the stretch. Let's keep in mind too that the Arlington Million distance of a mile and an eighth, certainly not Burnham Square's best distance. He's been much more impressive at a mile and a half on the turf earlier this year in multiple races that he's had. He'll probably go on to run at Kentucky Downs next, I'd imagine, in the Kentucky Turf Cup. Also, the Jim Dandy was last weekend, 2 weekends ago now, I guess, at Saratoga, end of July. In the Jim Dandy, it featured a clash between Renegade and Commandment. Those two had kind of been squaring off. Second and third, Commandment and Renegade was the order in the Belmont Stakes. Before that, in the Kentucky Derby, of course, Renegade was the runner-up in that race. Commandment finished seventh, but instead, Renegade turned the tables on Commandment after finishing behind him in the Belmont, and Silent Tactic returned with his first race since the Arkansas Derby. He was third. So then that leaves the door open for who are the contenders for the Travers. Of course, Golden Tempo missed the Jim Dandy because of the fever. He's still on track, though, to run in the Travers Stakes after missing the Jim Dandy. Renegade, so is drawn in the Travers, so is Commandment, so is Silent Tactics. So those top three finishers in the Travers all expected to head on there as well. A Napoleon Solo, the Preakness winner, runner up on the Haskell, he's going to go to the Travers, it's expected. Baby Vino also on the probable list. Also, Leading Change, who won the Indiana Derby last out, he will as well. The Puma didn't love the sloppy track at the Haskell. He'll also probably run in the Travers. Emerging Market raced against Open Company in an allowance. He was second there. He's also a possibility for the Travers. O'Sally did not like that muddy track at all in the Haskell. He was last. He could go to the Travers. Actually, I take that back. I think that was the Ohio Derby. O'Sally did not do as well. And Sea Strike won the Curlin Stakes. He is bound for the Travers for Chad Brown, an impressive open lengths win there. Chief Wallaby was well beaten in the Curlin for Bill Mott. He may go to the Travers. And Sabino Canyon is one for Bob Baffert. He won a stake recently, I believe at Colonial Downs as well. And he may go to the Travers. That was the Pachamelo Mile. Also, there was a grade one race a couple of weekends ago. The Clement L. Hirsch at Del Mar. Eunomia came over to the West Coast for Saffie Joseph Jr. and beat and Joy, held off a late charge from her. Eunomia picked up her first grade one career win, and grade one career win for Saffie Joseph Jr., his first grade one win at Del Mar. That is the big headlines from the last couple of weeks. Looking ahead, though, to this upcoming weekend, there are some big races, not as blockbuster of a weekend as some others, but a big weekend nonetheless. At a couple of different tracks, including across the border at Woodbine. There's the King's Plate, Canada's biggest track, or biggest race rather. Woodbine has the King's Plate, $1 million on the line. At Phillies have had success recently in the King's Plate, and another one might as well with Luster. She won the Woodbine Oaks. She will likely be one of the favorites. She's done well in stakes company all season long against Phillies, which will be stepping it up to taking on the boys. Also, Highway to the Moon, he won the Plate Trial Stakes. He could be a tough one. And then Bricketto as well is another one that I think you should watch out for. He won the Green Stakes, which is a prep there as well. The big grade one this weekend, stateside, the Christophe Clement Turf at Saratoga, renamed the Christophe Clement Turf. It used to be the Sword Dancer Stakes. Sword Dancer, of course, is one of Christophe Clement's famous grade one winners. There are a number of horses in here, and wouldn't it be fitting if Miguel Clement would win another stakes race? He's got Tawnyport entered in the Christophe Clement last out. He won the Belmont Gold Cup Stakes. Also, Old Crazy Bone. Last out, he won the Bowling Green Stakes at Saratoga as well. Program Trading won the United Nations for Chad Brown. And Servy, a filly from England, she is going to try to win the race. Last out, she won the Glens Falls at Saratoga as well. So obviously, Old Crazy Bone, Servy, and Tawnyport all have their most recent wins at Saratoga. They like the track. Program Trading won the Grade 2 United Nations at Monmouth Park. See how he does in that one. And the last race to note this upcoming weekend, the Long Acres Mile, of course. Any Washington State racing fans will know the history of the Long Acres Mile for years, for decades, the biggest race in Washington State at Long Acres. Now closed track. Now it's at Emerald Downs, newer track in the Seattle area in Auburn. And the defending champ, Arrow the Great, he came up the rail last year in a really great performance. He is going to be returning in this race as well. He's expected to, but he hasn't raced since then. So we'll see how he does if he does make that return. Arrow the Great looking for a year-long layoff to turn into another win in the Long Acres Mile. Also, Bob Baffert could be sending two horses. He's got Privman coming in off of a stakes win. Miramati was leading in the San Diego Handicap before he finished fifth in that race. Those are the ones to watch. Another big weekend of racing coming up. The summer months always busy. A lot of tracks having their biggest weekends of the year, especially there with Emerald Downs and Woodbine up in Toronto. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for your time. Be sure to like, hype, subscribe, comment, whatever you feel like. Doesn't matter. Do one, do all. Just thankful to have you watching. So grateful for all your time. Once again, I am Timothy Lateau. This has been the Paddock Press Report. See you at the races.